Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. From the right, I'm Gary Polland.
And all the way over to the left, I'm David Jones.
And I'm glad he's there. Tonight we welcome mayoral candidate Roy Morales. Roy is the fourth candidate of the major candidates for the city of Houston that's been with us. He's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and in reading his biography, he was the chief technical officer for the 911 Center in Houston, which is very important to all Houstonians, and we welcome you, Roy.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I see you saved the best for last.
That's right.
That's right.
So, Roy, speaking of last, the poll, the only poll that we've seen has you there, although higher than some would have thought. Now, your problem, of course,
and to be fair, David, within the margin of error to move up through 2 slots.
This race is wide open. If you look at the poll by KUHF just about a month ago, statistical did heat with Denise Parker.
But we know that this is an important venue for you. I mean, because you're not up on the air, so you have to get your message across in places like this. So why don't we start off by saying, how do you move up? Here's a guy that is, like, whether it's statistically there or not, rated, third or fourth, and you aren't raising a lot of money. I deny that. So how do you get to that runoff position?
Well, I appreciate being here because this is one of the ways to do it, through earned media. The other way is through the old-fashioned way, mail. We have mail going out right now. I'm on a radio station, a conservative radio station, getting that message out. And we have a host of volunteers. We've had different companies within the sign industry. They've been able to provide signs. We've had 2,000 signs go out in a week. We have 2 campaign offices where they're flooded with phone calls and people coming in every day to get a Roy Morales sign.
And who are you going to pick in the runoff if you're not going to be in it? Who's your favorite candidate for the runoff?
You're looking at them. I'm going to be in the runoff.
Brown. I mean, who would you like to oppose? Who would you like to be opposite in the runoff?
They're all tough candidates, and it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's my message that's going to win.
Yeah, and last thing about this race Roy, is that there has been an effort made by Republicans in the past to elect a mayor. Rob Mousebacker spent, several $1 million. Orlando Sanchez, several $1 million. Got into close races, but didn't make it. Gary will tell you this is a Democratic city. Why do you think you have a shot?
I'll tell you why I have a shot. First off, I believe I'm the most qualified candidate the Republicans have had in a long time. That's one, having a military background. 2, this is the right time. Having a Hispanic run, to be able to get out a conservative message out to the East End is very important. And I think every day that President Obama's in office is a good day for me.
So there you go. So the voters can vote against Obama and vote for Morales. That sends Obama a message, David.
It's all about Obama.
Okay, let's talk about issues, because if you're elected mayor, there's lots of challenges to deal with in the city. First and foremost, we know that under the president administration, the city is running an operating deficit, estimated between $50 and $100 million. How would you deal with it?
Well, let's really tell the public what's going on. It's time to have full disclosure. Over the last 5 years, there's been an operating deficit of $1.5 billion. That's $1.5 billion taxpayer dollars out of the general fund. They paid it off using the savings account. But if you look at the controller's comprehensive annual financial report during that period, the net asset is a negative $1.3 billion. In other words, the city is bankrupt. And this has occurred while Peter Brown's been on city council and while Denise Parker's been our city controller. No one has stood up and said no to Bill White. And now we're in this predicament.
Pam Holm didn't, and other so-called Ann Clutterbuck didn't. So tell us, Roy, who has endorsed this particular view, who's not running for office, so that we can have some way of indicating, of understanding whether or not this is anything other than a partisan position. Who's endorsed the view that you just gave us?
Everybody is talking about this, and nobody's talking about this. I'm standing up and talking about it. It's in a document. It's in a public document. It's right there. It's in black and white. It says what the dollars are.
Okay.
And it's been viewed by everybody.
But you're not a CPA.
No, but I have a lot of CPAs. But let me tell you what I am. I am on the Harris County Department of Education, and I am the chairman of the Audit and Budget Committee. And I'm the only candidate that has ever frozen property taxes for Houstonians.
Okay, I want to talk more about this deficit you mentioned. Okay. And assuming the numbers are true, David has doubts, but what does he know? What do we do about it? What do we do about that? That's a serious problem.
It is a serious problem. We have to tackle it in several ways. The first way is that we have to stimulate this economy. and we do that by creating jobs. We do that by providing property tax relief to our families and to our businesses to allow them to stimulate, the dollars out there. It's their money. They need to spend it when and where they choose, not government. When they spend that money, they'll spend more money, and that comes back in tax revenue to us. That's the first thing. The second thing is I'm going to take a pay cut, and every senior level executive is going to take a pay cut. Third, we're going to audit every department, just like Kathy Whitmire did, but never finish. We start with HFD and HPD, and then we go into Public Works. I can tell you 2 areas already within HPD. They purchase video cameras for their vehicles. They're not in the vehicles, they're in a warehouse. $4,000 a piece. The contractor's gone out of business. That's waste. Let's turn to Public Works. 1 billion gallons of water. They can't charge. They don't know who to charge it to. That costs money. We can find dollars out there and put it back into the system so we can have more police officers, so we can have more firefighters.
So you think that mayors create jobs? Because I don't know of a mayor that really has taken credit for having created, other than public service jobs.
Well,
you could put people on the city payroll.
The mayor and government entities have a responsibility. They do a good job of tearing down jobs like Safe Clear. They created monopolies out there and put hundreds of tow truck drivers out of business. Now, if the mayor can take away jobs, surely he can create jobs, putting money out there and removing these roadblocks.
You're endorsing a stimulus plan for the city. Sort of an Obama plan, but at the local level.
No,
is that it?
No, not at all.
Because certainly, if the government injects money into the economy, that's supposed to create the demand for jobs. Is that what
there's a difference. I'm not giving to Chrysler. I'm giving to people. That's a big difference, David.
So you're going to rebate?
No, I'm giving property tax relief. And you do that by, when you set the tax rate, you go below the effective tax rate. That way it counters the appraisal. If the appraisal goes up, you go below that effective. That means I'll give you money back. I've done that at the Harris County Department of Education. I have a track record. That's how we stimulate. But we have to remove the roadblocks. That helps create jobs out there. If you have a tax-friendly and a business-friendly city, you have businesses come here from around the world. And let me tell you, that creates jobs.
Gary, he's talking your story.
That creates tax revenue too, David. Okay, let's talk about public safety. 60% of the budget in the city of Houston goes for police and fire. We've heard comparable statistics. Los Angeles, they spend 35%. Why do we spend such a high percentage on it, and why do we have so few policemen and maybe not as many firemen as we need?
What we have to do is that we have to go in and audit the department, like I said. We have to be able to put police officers, at least 2, in a vehicle in the evenings, on the holidays, and on the weekends. That's when the criminals show up. We don't do a good job of prevention and deterrence. That is going to be the strategy that I'm going to employ for the city. Just like we do in the military. We go after the command and control. We use every database that we have to go after the criminals. We don't let them come to us. That's what a 911 system is. It's a reactionary system. We're going to turn that around, and we're going to go after the criminals. But how do we find those dollars? That's the key. I think that we're very top heavy within HPD. We have probably a lot of middle managers, and we need to look at how we can get those sergeants out from behind the desk and back into the patrol car. That's the key.
You don't have any police officer endorsements, so tell the average cop on the beat why you're going to be a friendlier mayor to the average cop on the beat when the organizations that represent them are endorsing and supporting other candidates.
You mean the unions?
Yeah, anybody, any police. There's other
unions.
There's
still unions.
Still unions. You have a union father in your background.
I do.
You got something against union guys?
Well, not at all. Not at all. We are a union family, but we have. This state has survived because we're a right-to-work state, and I'm the only candidate that stood up to the AFL-CIO and stated that. Are there places for unions? You bet. But sometimes unions get out of control, like with my father, and they ended up dissolving because the company couldn't continue on. There's a point that we work together, and that's where it's failed. And with HPD and within the fire, we're going to have to work with those unions. I agree. If you ask the average police officer on the beat, did you have a say-so in picking Gene Locke or Anise Parker? And they'll tell you no, they didn't. And if you listen to a commercial on a conservative radio station that's running for Mr. Locke, when are we going to start telling the truth? When a police officer, if he was one, says, we screened every candidate, well, that's absolutely untrue.
They didn't screen you?
They didn't screen me. I was not screened, even though they called me in about 6 months earlier and asked me if I'd be there for them for 287G, and I told them I would.
287G, you can explain for us, please?
Oh, I'd love to explain that. That will allow our police officers to enforce illegal immigration laws. There's a program set up with Homeland Security to provide the training for our local police officers in dealing with the illegal immigration. Right now, our current plan was to allow our jailers to identify anyone that had been arrested if they were illegal or not.
Even if it's just a traffic arrest?
Even if they're taken in into the jailhouse,
if they're taken to jail for a traffic arrest, their background should be checked so that we could deport them?
Well, if you're familiar with the General Order Policy, aren't you? 500, and it says anything above a Class C misdemeanor. Is that correct?
Above Class C.
Do you agree?
So that's traffic. That's non-traffic.
Do you agree with that?
Anybody arrested with a crime, AB or felony, sure.
Yes, okay. Well, are you aware that the state law changed 1st of September, where if someone's pulled over and if they don't have a driver's license or insurance, that becomes a Class B misdemeanor. And on top of that, if they're in an accident and an individual is hurt or is killed, it's now a Class A. So I believe now General Order 500 will apply to take individuals
and
to our
be
jails.
fair, Roy, I mean, when we bring people into the jails, they check them for all kinds of things. They check for other warrants. They check about prior criminal records, if any, etc. So it's just another check, right?
Exactly. That's all it is.
And we're just assisting the federal government to do its job, David.
But you're not endorsing having just a stop of a car just to check to see whether or not people are legal?
I'm not checkpoint.
This isn't Eastern Europe in the 60s. This is still Houston, Texas. We are a democracy. I do not agree with profiling. I do not believe in checkpoints. I just want to make sure we get the worst of the worst off the streets.
So would you get rid of the current police chief, Mr. Hurt?
Absolutely.
And do you have anybody in mind? Who would be your police chief?
We're going to search for one. I want someone that understands how New York used the CompStat program, how Los Angeles used the CompStat program.
So what is that?
The CompStat program is it's very similar to what we had in the military and in acquisition. It gives you a way of working as teams. You're able to use all the information you have on the criminals. You bring together these forces and apply them against the command and control of organized crime, and you continue to go after the unorganized crime, the petty thieves as well. That's key. I want to make sure that we have a police chief that actually resides in the city of Houston 24/7. I think that's key. I think your lead law enforcement official needs to be here in his town or her town. That's very important.
That's not going on now.
That's not going on now. He commutes.
The Chronicle had a big story, Roy, that said that the fire department has just a collapse in their hiring of women firefighters. They're just nowhere to be found. And, of course, they have somewhat of a reputation for being a misogynistic organization, and in the past, racist, I think you would agree.
Right.
Would you agree?
I think
and if so, what are we going to do about this?
Well, let's not use generalities here. There's been some examples here, and that has to change because we don't want to take perception and turn it to reality. What we have to do is we have to make sure that every department is trained to avoid sexism or racism. In the military, we had that. We had annual training, and I will ensure that all employees have that training as well. This is not the time to offend others. It's time to work with each other.
And the military, Gary, as you know, was highly, highly regarded for its basically an affirmative action type of program that promoted people, and of course many black men and women have advanced in the military. Do you support the affirmative action programs currently employed at the City of Houston?
No, I don't.
Why?
It's broken. It's broken. We need a plan for minorities and women-owned businesses so they stop being the subs. They need to be the primes. Instead of taking the crumbs, they need the cake. That's what we should be shooting for, and that's what the current program drives these companies to, the crumbs. And they need more.
Well, don't they have to build their relationships and develop their businesses so that they can one day be the general contractor rather than the sub?
But they don't need to make a living at it. They need to be able to have the pathway to be those general contractors. And I believe that program that was in place, that was set up by Mr. Locke, is a failure.
Okay, how about term limits? Cities had term limits, 2-year terms. It seems like city council people are never stop running, kind of like congressmen, and there's a learning curve. Do you think there's an argument to be made to either get rid of or modify term limits?
I'm standing with the current term limit policy that's in place.
Okay. How about Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio all have city managers. City manager is a professional manager to basically run the city, and the mayor being the chief executive officer and the city manager being the chief operating officer. Are you ready to consider a city manager for Houston?
No,
Why not?
No, I'm not. Because I believe I'm as qualified as any other city manager out there with my background from military, from my business, and from working with the city as a senior level executive.
Tell us how many people you managed whenever you were at the highest level of the military career that you had. How many people were underneath you?
Well, there were sometimes a couple of hundred to small teams of about 20 experts. We were pretty much kind of like the boys from Dover. When there was a problem around the world, they sent us to a commander. So we had experts in certain fields, kind of like the A-team. And we'd go there and we'd take care of our adversary. But while I was at the Houston Emergency Center...
Which was when?
This was back about 5 years ago. I was hired in as the assistant director, and I was also the chief technology officer. I had about 25 people. However, the director decided to retire. And so they asked me to fill in. I had activated the center, and I was responsible for over 400 people at that time, both the operations and the technicals portions of it.
Roy, Morales, why aren't the voters more interested in this race than they seem to be? I mean, is it the case that these candidates, yourself included, are just not speaking about issues that matter to Houstonians? What accounts for this lack of interest in this race?
What it is that that families and people are very concerned right now. They're concerned of what's going on in Washington, D.C. They're seeing their whole lives, and they're seeing this America being ripped apart. That's what's taken center stage right now. They're now realizing that we do have a local election, and they do realize that there's an opportunity to have some conservative policies put in place, and so their families can start sleeping at night again and knowing that they have an opportunity to send their children to school.
Well, that's an argument for maybe replacing the Democratic Congress, but I don't know what it means to this particular race here.
The closest politics to you is the local politics, and people are starting to see that now. They're starting to understand that they don't want the Washington type of liberal policies here in Houston. For example, cap and trade will have an effect on this state, and it'll have an effect on us locally, where they will try to create these inspectors that will go out there and tell you whether you can sell your home or not. That's local politics that's being driven from Washington. And when they tell you that your home doesn't have the same standard as California, I have problems with that.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about stadiums. The Dynamo, the Houston professional soccer team, wants a new stadium. The city has bought land or acquired land on the east end of downtown. Do you believe the city needs to get any more involved in developing another sports stadium for one of our professional teams?
I believe the remaining portion of this project should be privately funded. We should, as a city, promote it. I want to be able to take that area where the stadium is to be built and revitalize all of it. I want to see townhomes. I want to see condos. I want to see markets. I want to see that as an Epcot center of international communities around it. And then what I want to do is I want to light it up at night, so if you're on the space station, you'll be able to see Houston, Texas, and not Las Vegas, Nevada.
You know, we talked about this stadium. We had the other stadium deals. We had the baseball stadium. We had the basketball arena. We had the football arena. And we were sold as citizens this was going to be great for economic development. It was going to increase tourism. Has that panned out?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, if you look at especially the Hotel Americas down there, which is run by Hilton, it's managed. Its occupancy rate is so low, and it's costing the city too much money. It's run, and I hate to bring this up again, it's a union hotel, and we, the taxpayers, are paying for that. When you have a busboy that wears a tie, white shirt, little coat, getting paid $28 an hour, You know, a lot of people out there would like to have that kind of money right now.
That's my rate.
That's more, I
You get
more
paid,
than
I
you
think you
make.
get paid more than that.
I think this last.
This city is full of people in desperate times. You've alluded to that. Probably median income for the city of Houston is probably $30,000, I would guess. We have an unemployment rate 25% in Hispanic and African American communities, and that's probably conservative. We have kids that need to be on the CHIP health program. We have people who could be enrolled in Medicaid so that they get health care. What are you going to do for the people who are desperate in this city, who need those services, and not just an argument that says, hey, elect a Republican Congress?
What we have to be able to do is take care of, one, our financial house, two, get the economy started here, and three, we have to do something for those that can't help themselves. It's a shame that if you look at the mentally ill, which a great majority that are out here on the streets are, that this state ranks 50th in helping those. We have to be able to change that. We have to be able to find jobs, and that's what my program will do, create jobs so we can get those back to work again. Now, granted, there's some that can't, that, you know, they're disabled, especially, and it's a shame, especially those coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. What are we going to do about the military that are ended up out here on the streets? That's uncalled for, and we've got to be able to find ways to get them back and working.
On your website, Roy, you mentioned a new vision. What is your new vision?
My new vision is making sure that we keep our children in school and off the streets. I don't want to be called the school czar. We have some good independent school districts. We have some good superintendents and very good trustees. But I will be a loud voice. I will work with the Harris County Department of Education, make sure we continue our after-school programs. I understand that it's so important to cultivate our young during the early years, because that makes them great leaders. And when they're great leaders, this is going to make us a great city. And it's key to keep them off the streets, away from the criminal element.
You propose the city you propose the city fund after-school programs?
They already do about
do.
$660,000.
Okay.
And that, what they do is they send that money to the Harris County Department of Education, where they go get additional federal funds. Plus, we also have a Harris County Educational Foundation that we put in private money as well to make sure that we have places for these children to go. Since, you know, their parents are working, you know, maybe 2 jobs, they need to be supervised somehow. And we give them that opportunity.
Well, you mentioned schools. You don't want to be the school czar, but the mayor of New York, the mayor of Los Angeles, the mayor of Chicago, all are intimately involved in education. And HISD has a dropout rate of at least 50%. That's pretty high for a minority dropout rate. Is there a role for the city in trying to reduce this ridiculous dropout rate?
Well, it's really worse than that. If you look at the east end of town, the Hispanic population, Hispanic children, only about 16% are receiving college degrees, where if you go to the Asian community on the west side, 61%. If you look at the infrastructure in these areas, the west end is booming. We have to turn that infrastructure on the east end. We have to make that booming. That's the keys. You have to be able to keep the infrastructure up to date, and so businesses will go there. Businesses are there, and they provide that tax revenue for our schools to keep our children in there. But, you know, at the same time, Washington and Austin tie our hands as trustees, but also our parents, our grandparents, they have to be involved with their children's education. That's where it really starts.
We've called a couple of candidates on their resumes, Roy, so I'll have to ask you about one item, too.
Sure.
Do you stand by the remark that on September the 11th, 2001, you developed the military objectives that were sent to the White House to respond to the terrorist attacks?
That's right.
You were talking to George W. Bush?
I was asked by the joint...
Or did you send an email and you don't know what happened to it?
No. Let's tell it how it is, okay, David?
Okay.
I was given orders to develop a plan. I was one of the major planners for the Joint Command and Control Warfare Center, also called the Joint Information Operations Center. That's our job, to develop strategy and objectives for all the commanders around the world. This one was requested to send to the National Command Authority. That was my job. It went to the Joint Staff back in Washington, D.C., who turned it over to the White House.
David, we could interview have another show talking about what Obama should do in Afghanistan, because it sounds like he knows what
Well,
he's
I don't believe Roy wants to claim credit for the failures of Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, maybe he has
surely.
some answers for Obama, though.
I'll bet you didn't have as much to do with the failures over there
I
as
had
that
already
remark would
retired.
suggest.
I wish I just followed my plan.
There you
Thanks
go.
for being with us, Roy Morales.
Thank you,
This has
Roy.
been fun.
Thank
fun
you, David.
half hour.
Thank you, Gary.
Hope to see you again.
You will.
So you can see tonight's show and a follow-up discussion with Gary and I by visiting HoustonPBS.org. There you can find out more about red, white, and blue. So check that out. And don't forget to vote on November 3rd. And, of course, early vote happens now. And until next time we see you, get informed and get active.